What's going on, guys? Stefan, S&E's Garage. Today we're going to talk about how the cheapest running and driving Wrangler in the USA nearly bankrupted me. So this Wrangler is probably the best bad decision I've ever made. I've come to really enjoy this thing. My kids enjoy it, my family enjoys it, and we have a lot of fun with it. But it looked like a good deal at face value at $3,500 because that is what we paid for this. It ran and it drove, but it didn't really do either of those very well, and we spent a lot of money in both repairs and modifications to get this thing to look the way it does now. So the amount of money that I spent on this thing is staggering, and honestly I probably could have bought a lower mileage, cleaner version of one of these Jeeps for that money. But here's the thing, for what we use this for running through the woods. You can see we did put some scratches on it. They might not show in the camera. We did put some what they call brush burn on it from going down thin trails and having trees scratch it and stuff. And I honestly probably would have felt kind of bad if I did that to a lower mileage nice condition vehicle. So this ended up working out perfect for us. So when we bought it, it was not lifted. It had worn tires on it. Actually, I can go show you the tires that we took off of it. So it did desperately need a set of tires. So at that point I said, if I'm going to put tires on it, I'm going to put big tires on it. And I'm going to lift it. So let's come over here, I'll show you. These were the tires that we removed. So they are very worn. Another issue that this thing had that I noticed on a test drive was a very noticeable shudder at around 35-40 miles an hour. Now when I got home and scanned it, there were no transmission codes, but there were several misfire codes along with an EGR code, and there was a bunch of codes in it. So I thought I was going to get lucky, throw some plugs and wires in it and an EGR valve, and that was going to fix my problem. But I was very wrong. So that shudder actually ended up being a torque converter shudder because the torque converter clutch completely blew apart. And as it turned out, we tried to flush the fluid to fix the shudder, because in some vehicles that will help. It did not with this. It actually made it worse. All of the clutch material that was in the transmission went ahead and clogged that filter, and we lost all forward and reverse gears. So at that point we dropped the pan, changed the filter, and we got a couple more weeks out of it, but then it started having delayed engagements, and I said, all right, you know what, that's it. And we ended up having to spend $1,700 on a transmission for this. Now the paper that I'm going to show you is what we have in it in total with the purchase price, and then I separated modifications like the lift and several other things, and repairs. Now keep in mind, it is all parts. I did all of the labor minus the gearing myself. So let's go ahead, let me show you that piece of paper. Keep in mind that the purchase price was $3,500. You're going to see that right up here. These are all of the items and bills that we paid on this Jeep, for a grand total of $12,519.20. So we are $12,500 into a 2010 Jeep with 270,000 miles on it. Doesn't sound like that good of a deal, but it's a four-door Wrangler. You can't touch one of these with low mileage for under 15 grand. And if you think about it, most of my drivetrain now has very low mileage. My gearing, in the axles, all the bearings are brand new. The transmission has around 60,000 miles on it. That's low mileage. So the only thing with 270,000 miles on it now is the engine and the body. And this is the 3.8 liter minivan V6. Yeah, it ticks a little bit, but runs great. Has good compression, doesn't burn oil. So I think we're going to be in good shape with this Jeep for a little while. So we went ahead and we spent $3,500 basically on mods. So let's go ahead and walk around. I'll show you everything we did. Number one, we have the rough country 2.5-inch lift. I didn't put the tires on the mod list because it needed tires. We just decided to buy bigger ones. We did add our spacers. We did add these bushwhacker guards here for the fenders, because on the passenger side there was a big dent there because somebody let the door swing open and whack it. So right about here we had a nice big tennis ball sized dent. We spent around $400 here on this rough country light bar. We did upgrade our headlights. They were around $150 if I remember. The gearing was probably the single most expensive mod. So what I did for the gearing is I traded a 2004 Camry that I had with 320,000 miles on it. And we were into that car for $730. So I gave that car away plus $1,440 for the parts. So I didn't do that math because I didn't add that up. Let me add that up real quick. And like I said, that was our most expensive mod. So almost $2,200 of our mod, quote unquote, budget here was for the gearing between the trade of the car and the parts themselves. And we did upgrade to a Detroit True Track limited slip differential in the rear. That way when we're out in the trails, you know, it's better. It actually, I found that I don't really need to use four-wheel drive nearly as much with the limited slip in the rear because it has such good traction. So we also did a little stubby antenna up here because I found that this antenna was getting whacked a lot when we were going down the trails, you know, because it was all the way up here swinging all over the place. So we got the stubby antenna. When we did the gearing, we had to do new front hub bearings because the hub bearings were seized to the axle. So we did do 2 new front wheel bearings. And we also had to do new rear brakes and new rear parking brake shoes because they were also rusted and had to be beat off the car. So that was another one of those things that because we were doing the gears, that had to be done. It actually, it's like a snowball effect. Things keep adding up. So let's get into the Jeep now. And I'm going to show you some other things we did in here that, again, weren't absolutely necessary, but with 270,000 miles and a previous owner that didn't really care for the interior very well, we went ahead and upgraded our carpets here. So we did carpets in the front seats, and we did new carpets here in the back seats. Now this is like a bed liner carpet. So it is mold and mildew resistant. So if the Jeep leaks or if we get caught with the top down somewhere and it rains, you pull it out, it dries off very quick. You pull your drains in the drain pan, you throw it back in. So I think this was a very good idea because it's going to make the Jeep that much more durable, especially in terms of what we use it for. Now another modification that I did that isn't quote unquote necessary, but something that I did to expand the life of this 42 RLE transmission that we put in, is we went ahead and put in an auxiliary transmission cooler because we are going to be towing jet skis with this. I did not want to overheat my new transmission. I did not want to cause any damage to it because heat is the #1 enemy for automatic transmissions. So I do have a video on that. Any of these things that I'm mentioning, I probably have a video on. So you can go ahead and check that out if you need to. But I have noticed that, you know, the transmission, it doesn't get hot, which is good. I do want to put a transmission temperature gauge in line somewhere to see exactly where I'm at there. But we'll see what happens. Now, I do have a couple of things that I put on the mod list that I didn't install yet. I do have extended sway bar end links and sway bar disconnects to put in. Because right now my sway bar angle is way off. You'll see here, because I still have the factory end links in. Your sway bar should be parallel with the frame, and ours is not. So I do have the parts for that. But that should just about cover it for the mods here on this Jeep. We went over the lift, we went over the spacers, we went over the fender guards, we went over the light bar, the trans mount, and we went over the carpets inside. So let's pop the hood. Let's show you the repairs we did. Now this 270,000 mile engine does not leak a drop of anything because we basically resealed everything. You'll see here we have our nice fresh valve cover gaskets on both sides. See that one right there, nice and blue. We did our thermostat housing and gasket, and a new thermostat. We went over the complete ignition system because, like I said, we did have some random multiple misfire codes. They are all gone. You'll see we have our brand new NGK coil, our NGK wires, and I think we used Denso plugs because they were a little bit cheaper, but NGK and Denso are pretty much interchangeable when it comes to spark plugs. So we went over the complete ignition system on this thing. We did put a new EGR valve in it. That guy is back there. You can just about see the top of it right there in the center of your screen. So that is new. We did 2 new oxygen sensors because the one was throwing a code on the passenger side, bank 1 sensor 1, and then when I had the transmission out, I had the whole catalytic converter pipe down. I said, you know what, let me put another oxygen sensor in, that way they both are the same brand and they match. So we have 2 Bosch oxygen sensors in here. We did go ahead and upgrade our front drive shaft because of the lift, and when we did that, we had to change the yoke here on our transfer case. And when we changed the yoke, the transfer case output shaft steel started leaking. So we had to replace that while the transmission was out. Again, we put a transmission in it, $1,700. You look under here, you'll see our nice shiny new transmissions somewhere. There it is right there. There's the pan. You'll see there are no leaks under this thing because we put also a rear main seal in it when we had the transmission out. Like I said, this thing just kept snowballing. So the transmission was probably the single most expensive repair item at $1,700, along with the things needed to make the repair. I had to buy a special disconnect tool for the trans lines, which actually ended up not working. I ended up just using a pick anyway, but I did buy it. All the fluid that I had to buy a new output shaft seal for my extension housing. I had to buy a new output shaft retaining clip for the extension shaft because my new transmission didn't come with the extension shaft. And then I had to do the rear main seal, and I had to do the lower oil pan gasket on the engine again because they were leaking, and it didn't make sense not to do them while the transmission was out. And of course, as soon as you disrupt the rear main seal, the lower pan seal started hemorrhaging, so I had to do that. All the transmission fluid, ATF plus 4, that shit's expensive. I had to put a new transmission filter in it. I didn't have to, but the transmission's sitting on the ground. It doesn't make sense not to. So all these little things just kept adding up. Some other issues we had here was leaks around the doors. So we went ahead, replaced the front door seals, along with the hardtop foam. So now that we're in the cheapest running and driving Jeep in the USA, which is no longer the cheapest because of everything I put in it, let's fire it up. Okay, and what you are greeted with here is a 270,000 mile Jeep. Starts right up with no error lights, which is awesome. Now keep in mind, we are lifted 2.5 inches, we do have 34-inch tires, and we do have gearing. If you want your speedometer to be right, you're going to need to buy one of these guys here. This is a Super Chips F5, and what we use that for is to calibrate the speedometer for both the tires and the gearing. That way the speedometer is correct and your shift points are correct. So let's go ahead and take you for a drive in this thing and show you what we ended up with. And you guys can be the judge on if you think this was good money spent or if it was bad money spent. Now the JKU here, the JK series of the Wrangler, was introduced in 2007, and it had a production run all the way until I believe 2018. And this was the first generation of Jeep that was offered in a 4-door. And I happen to love the 4-door because I'm a family man. I have 2 young kids. You'll see their car seats are back here. And it makes it a lot easier than having to fold down seats and, you know, do things like that when I could just open doors. So I probably wouldn't have been in the market for a Jeep if there was no such thing as the 4-door. So we are very happy that they came out with that. But let's just pay attention here. You'll see this thing runs and drives flawlessly. There are no abnormal noises, no suspension noises, Everything shifts nice, the engine runs good, and we have a perfectly running and driving Jeep. Now, Jeep only used this 3.8 liter V6 engine in these from 2007 to 2011. In 2012, they went ahead and switched to the Pentastar 3.6 liter, which has substantially more horsepower and quite a bit more torque because it is double overhead cam, variable valve timing, whereas this is a plain Jane 3.8 liter, 2-valve per cylinder pushrod engine. Now, when they changed to the Pentastar in 2012, came some reliability issues. Cam followers and rockers like to fail on those. The oil cooler that is smack dab in the V of the engine likes to fail, and you'll leak coolant and or oil. And the reliability took a bit of a tank when they went to that engine, but with that came more power. So I'm kind of glad that I have the 3.8 iron block pushrod V6. If anything breaks, super easy to fix. And with 270,000 miles, I have to assume something's going to happen sooner than later. But for right now, she's running great. So let's go ahead here and take you off-roading a little bit here, just to show you how she drives. Now, we went with a budget rough country lift because I wasn't really looking to reinvent the wheel. But I did go ahead and spend the extra money on on their kit that came with new springs and shocks, because they have another kit that will only come with pucks and shock extenders. And with 270,000 miles on the suspension, I figured let's get some new springs in there, because who knows if these are sagged or not. So we do have new springs, we do have brand new shocks, new shock bushings, but everything else is stock. Control arm bushings, that's all stock. Now, right now, we are only in two-wheel drive, and like I said, we do have that posi on. So let's just go ahead and turn off our traction control. This is some soft sand here. Let's see if we can make it up here without four-wheel drive. And we are slipping a little bit, but because of that limited slip, all four of our wheels were slipping. So let's go ahead and get up this hill here. Again, we are still in two-wheel drive. We have not switched into four yet. And we're just cruising along here. The 488 gears make first and second gear excellent for trail riding, because it will stay in that lower gear and you'll have enough RPM to get over obstacles, to get this engine in the correct torque range that it needs to be in to do its job, because again, it is the 3.8 and it is a little bit underpowered. But sometimes less power on the trails is better, because you're less likely to break stuff. And I don't like breaking stuff. So everything's turning green now because it's springtime. I love it. This is my favorite time of year, spring and summer. So I guess the moral of the story here is don't do what I did. If you want a Jeep, if you want a Wrangler, 4-door, 2-door, whatever you want, don't buy the cheapest one you can find, because you're going to end up putting more money into it than it would have cost you to just buy a lower mileage Jeep with less issues. In hindsight, like I said, I probably would have done that, but like I said, I am glad that I know exactly what was done to this thing. I know exactly what it needs and what it doesn't need. And with the mileage that's on it, I don't feel bad doing this with it. I don't feel bad taking it out down trails and getting it scratched up and dirty and muddy. Just take it home, hose it off, do it again tomorrow. You know what I mean? You don't have to worry about damaging a Jeep with 270,000 miles on it. It's already been through the ringer. This Jeep was actually hitting the front end. I did have to put a new grill on it. You saw the angry grill we put on, and I had to pull the front fenders out a little bit because they were pushed in where the grill sat. So I got that almost perfect, but this is exactly what I was looking for. So right over here is one of my favorite little areas. It's like a hill climb slash hill descent. So I am going to go ahead and throw it in four-wheel drive real quick, and we're going to pop up right over this berm here. And then down here is a little hill, and then there's two trees there that you have to kind of thread the needle on, so you'll feel it. You're not going to feel it. You'll see we're dropping pretty good right now. And we're just going to thread the needle here between these two trees. And now we're in this little sand pit that I actually quite enjoy. This is one of these little areas that I like to take the kids with the windows down when it's nice out and the top off. And we just cruise around. I'm in four-wheel drive right now. I really don't need to be, so let's go ahead and put it back into two-wheel. Come up this, back down. Someone's fire pit here. Someone must have had a fire or something. They got some beer bottles and stuff. I don't like that. People need to clean up after themselves when they're out in the woods so we can all enjoy it. Once in a while I'll come out with a garbage bag and clean this crap up. Teach my kids that too. You know, respect the wilderness. But let's go back out the way we came in, and we'll go back out to the road and finish the video up. So we're going to slap her back up into four-wheel drive here. And there's our hill right there that we came down. So we're going to thread the needle here in between the two trees. Alright. And we're going to go straight up. Take it out of four-wheel. Come down the rest of the way. Alright guys, so the only quote-unquote mods that I'd like to do on this in the future is as follows. I do have a front bumper, a winch bumper, that was given to me that is pretty rusty, so I need to wire brush that, clean it up, paint it, and make it look real nice. And I'd like to put that on, and I'd like to get a 12,000 pound winch. I'm not looking to do the bumper and the winch for looks. I'm looking to do it for functionality. Like I said before, I come out in this Jeep with my family a lot. We go down new trails, we go exploring, and I've come across a couple of puddles where they looked pretty damn deep, and I was by myself and I didn't want a chance getting stuck with no way of getting out. And having that winch will give me that extra sense of security, so that if, God forbid, I do get stuck in a puddle or on a hill or something, if I get stuck, I can get myself out, I can get my family out. I'm not going to have to rely on a cell phone that might not have any service to call somebody that might not be able to come get me. So those are two things that we are definitely looking to do to this Jeep in the near future. And when I say near future, I mean we're probably going to tackle that this summer. But other than that, I'm happy with how it is now. I'd like to put bigger wheels and tires on it eventually, wider. Because right now we're on 34s. They're factory 2015 Grand Cherokee wheels with basically a 34-inch tire on them. I'd like to step it up to 35s and go a little bit wider, like a 35 1250. But that's excuse me, that's down the road. So for right now, it's basically going to look the way it looks for the time being, and we're just going to add a couple of little things to make it a little bit more safe to use out in the woods. But we are at a point with this now where I would go ahead and consider it, whoa, bumpy. I would go ahead and consider it fully sorted. because for the time being, it does not have any issues. Everything is fixed. I know I'm going to regret saying that right now because something's probably going to break. But we're about $12,500 all in to a fully sorted and tastefully modified Jeep Wrangler 4-door JKU. So now that we're on the road, we can actually talk without getting bumped all over the place. Thank you guys so much for watching. If this video interested you, please like, share, and subscribe. And stay tuned for some more videos featuring this Jeep. Like I said, we do have a few more little things we're going to be doing to it. And then I think I'm going to get a GoPro and start recording us going off-road, you know, to see some of the things that we do. We find ourselves doing some creek crossings. I just did a short doing one of them yesterday, which I thought was actually pretty neat. And we do get ourselves into some sticky situations that I think would be rather entertaining. So like, share, subscribe, hit the bell notification. That way you know when I'm uploading new content. And we'll see you on the next one.